Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk to a certified CPA career coach about the topic of PERT, the Practical Experience Reporting Tool, and tips on how to fill out your experience report to getting your CPA designation. If you like what you see, please give this video a thumbs up and also subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions, please let us know in the comments below. This is going to be a 3-part series talking to Casey about various CPA career topics. So today we have Chung here. So he is a qualified CPA and also an accounting coach that helps accountants grow in their career. So Casey and I actually connected through Instagram. We were just basically browsing each other's page, and we realized that we both have a passion on helping candidates progress, whether it's through their educational career paths or their actual career path where, you know, what do you do after you finish your CFE? What do you do after you finish your exams, right? So Cassie, why don't you share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me and including me, and also for you getting out in front of the camera as well. So I know this is a new experience for both of us, and we're testing out this new Zoom setting, so it's a really cool way to collaborate. My name is Casey. I'm a CPA and a certified coach, and I found that there was a very clear path to getting your CPA, and then a very muddy path to what happens after you get your CPA, and specifically the time in between writing your exam and qualifying for all your experience. And this came from my personal experience. I articled with KPMG in Vancouver. I spent about 3 years in audit. And during that time, I actually fast-tracked my exam. So I wrote at the end of my first year working. And basically for the remainder of the 15 to 20 months of work experience that I needed, I started to think about, well, what happens after I write the exam? And for me personally, and this might be something that you relate to, Alex, is my education was very paved out for me, literally from preschool or kindergarten. And with the CPA, it's an extension of post-secondary, and it takes a lot of work, a lot of time to get there. And when a path is so paved out for you, it actually gets easier to follow. And by the time we finish that final exam, CFE, we start to ask ourselves, okay, what next? And hey, guess what? There's no next exam. So that's where I felt extremely lost, even while I was at KPMG. And I found it was challenging to talk to the people that I worked with, the partners and managers, because when I started bringing up questions about what's next, and I'm thinking about something outside of the firm, I would get self-conscious and doubtful. Like, is this going to impact my performance rating? Is this going to impact the way that people think about my interest in staying with the company? And sure enough, I actually did decide to leave after qualifying. It's something that I really thought about. Should I leave before qualifying, after qualifying? And this is all after getting passing the CFE. I started to consider other options, but I felt like it was in my best interest to finish my qualification before making any career moves. So if you relate to that, you're definitely not alone. Fast forward a few years, I actually stayed with the company a little bit longer and acted as a performance manager for the junior staff at KPMG, the audit staff. As well, I was a CPA manager, the program manager. So I've reviewed a lot of PERT reports. I know the ins and outs of that, at least in the pre-approved route. So I'm very familiar with the CPA process. I'm familiar with the challenges that accountants face today. And I actually moved on from KPMG and started my own business called Chung Coaching. And I specifically help accountants find clarity on their next steps in their career. And whether that's chasing a promotion, finding a new job, moving industries, changing countries of origin, not of origin, but countries of work, starting a business. There's so many different career paths that are possible for CPAs. And this is what I really want to start to highlight in this conversation, as well as some of the common challenges and questions that future CPAs are facing. So really happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
So the first question is, what causes people to delay getting their CPA designation post-CFE? So that's assuming you have already passed the CFE.
The biggest mistake that I see is not informing yourself of the stages and the steps from finishing the CFE to getting fully qualified. And depending on your path, again, if you're coming from one of the professional service firms, you're likely in a pre-approved program, or if you're in industry, you're going to be going through an experience verification route, or if you're coming from another country, you might be going through another route. So many different pathways. And the biggest problem that I see is not getting in touch with your CPA branch. So if you're in BC, where I am, you go to CPA BC, etc. Mm-hmm. And why this is the biggest problem is because CPA itself will have the best source of information. And if you're resorting to your friends or your colleagues or your managers for this help, it could be helpful to hear what they've gone through. But at the end of the day, your situation may be unique to you. Mm-hmm. So CPA, think of them as they're on your team. It's really important that you're leveraging the resources they have available. And if you're not able to get through to them on email, like, give them a call, talk to a real person and ask these specific questions and continue to follow up, because your questions, longer that you don't have the answers, right? Longer that you don't have the answers about the process, what's required, how to fill out your reports, and as well the deadlines, is going to continue occupying your mind. And this is one of the most challenging parts of becoming a professional accountant. We're not just focused on work. We're not just focused on studying. We're not just focused on the process of applying for our applications. There's a lot on the go, and it's really up to you to take ownership of finding the information. And hopefully the remainder of this video will help give you some answers as well.
For sure. And to kind of add on that, like, I've had friends that, you know, delayed their designation in terms of getting their actual letters just because, you know, work got in the way. Sometimes when we work in firms, or if you have a busy season or something like that, or like year ends or quarter ends, you know, it gets in the way with filling out the papers. But I'd really encourage anyone to, you know, make sure you dedicate that time, because it does matter, right? Like, later on down your career, when you try to apply to different jobs, people will ask you, you know, when did you get designated, right? They don't ask you when did you finish your CFE, they ask you when you got designated. And you don't want to just, you know, delay it a year or two just because you forgot to fill out the papers or you didn't get enough information, right? So also another tip I'd say is, when you fill out your PERT reports, make sure you follow the template. I know personally, I had one of my PERT reports, let's say, rejected or just corrected, and it came back to me, and then I had to, you know, rewrite some parts of it and then send it back to them. And it's not an experience that you want to go through, because it takes like maybe a month or two for someone to get back to you, and then you have to wait a little bit longer for them to finally approve it. So I'd say that try to do them early, try to get them in, and always, you know, try to find some resources. Like Casey said, you know, there's the CPA in whichever province you're in is probably, you know, one of those trustworthy resources that you can call them up, email them, and see, you know, what they can provide for you when filling out these reports, because you want to, you know, do them correctly and you want to do them on time. So the next question is, what are some tips in writing your PERT report?
The biggest tip that I would say, and accountants are really good at tracking, is as you're developing in your career and in your role, is continually track what you're actually doing. So it gets really hard at the end of the year, or by the time you're ready to write your report, to remember everything. And yes, you can go into your files and the systems that you use to pinpoint. I'd say if you're watching this video right now, sign on to your PERT account and see what your status is, and ask yourself, how far are you on the path to completion? You know, if you've written the CFE already, of course, you need to have your 30 months of work experience. But when it comes to the enabling and technical competencies, you will need to put in time to self-reflect, to ask yourself the questions. And as well, you may even need to speak with your CPA mentor or your managers at work for them to verify some of your experience, and to ask them for experience that you might not feel like you have. And especially when it comes to technical competencies, I know for me, I didn't do a lot of tax work. And so when I was filling out my tax competencies, I actually needed to really reflect back and ask myself, when did I do tax work? Even if it was financial reporting for tax, and be able to reflect upon those experiences. So a big mistake that I see people go through is we get into the work, but we forget to track what we're actually doing. And it becomes a big headache of trying to recall. Now, I highly recommend you as well to periodically visit these competencies. So if you're not already meeting with your mentors on a regular basis, that's essential. And that way they could hold you accountable to completing this on a specific time. Now, finally, I think when we're lining up the 30 months of experience, it's a big question. is it just 30 months of experience that we need? And what if we're not attaining the technical competencies by the end of the 30 months? Like, what if we need 32 or 33 or 40 months of experience? So when filling out your reports, it's really important as well to space out the progression. Right? Space out the progression, fill out a few competencies each time you submit your reports, and write them out as structured as you can. Like, don't put in just a couple sentences. Like, really put in the effort when you're there. Like Alex said, you may get it rejected. Personally, for me, I had to redo a report, and it's pretty normal, to be very honest. And it does depend on the person that's reviewing. It does depend on what you're writing. It's really hard to predict. I'd say the goal isn't to be perfect. The goal is to get it done. Right? And once you get it done, you put it into the hands of CPA to review. You, of course, you need your employer to sign off on some of your experience as well. So have those conversations early. And I'm working on the assumption that it's more beneficial to finish your designation sooner than later, because that frees up so much mental space for you to start thinking about your next steps.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I really like your tip on, making sure you track your progress, because even, end of year performance reports, like you're asked, how did you do this year? And you're always like, what did I even do this year? Thinking back to the early projects that you ever work on.
Oh, and one thing, sorry, I do want to mention the competency map. You don't, again, it goes back to that first mistake. If you're not looking at that competency map and you don't know exactly what you're shooting for, look at that today. Like, literally after this video, maybe we could even include a link in the description here. Like, look at that today and compare. How many more competencies do you need to get to level 1 or level 2, and use that as your guide. Right? Again, everyone's experience is going to be different, especially if you're filling it out for yourself. So it's so important that you use a very specific guide for you to base your experience and reports off of.
Yeah. And I'd say for those that are, trying to start their PERT reports, starting their career, I'd always try to ask them, or challenge them in having a little bit more foresight of their role in terms of, can they get their, required enabling competencies or skills that they need in the current role? And if not, then it's like, how do you work with your current manager? How do you work with your current employer to actually get that? And if it's, something that you can't actually get in your current role, or you can't get all of those skills, then maybe reach out to someone like Casey, where it's like you could ask them for a career coach advice. So it's going to be, should I be moving out of my job? Should I be going somewhere else? Right? You want to have some foresight to know that, this role that you accepted that you're in can either get you your CPA, and if you can't, then how do you plan for another role that can? Right?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges in writing these reports, is justifying and sharing, yes, I've had these experiences. And there's a few different directions that I've helped clients overcome these barriers. Again, it starts with the competencies, seeing what it is that you need to be accomplishing to get your designation. And specifically when you're not feeling like you're getting the experience that you need, that's such an important moment of reflection for you to ask yourself whether or not you need to have a real conversation with your team or your manager and say, hey, I need to progress. It's really important for me to progress in my role. What opportunities or what tasks or what reports can you share with me for me to be involved in? And something that's really important is to fill out these reports. You don't have to be doing these, like, for the technical competencies. It's not like that has to be the core of your job. So if you're touching on specific tax or audit competencies just a few times during the year, and you're getting the mentorship and the coaching from the person that you're working with, I think that can justify that you have had practical experience in these areas. Now, there are circumstances where your role just does not give you the opportunity to grow and progress toward your CPA. In those cases, you may need to consider looking for roles outside. And that in itself is a whole nother process. And again, we could probably have a whole video on the process of looking for jobs. But for now, again, communication and looking at the roadmap is so important.
So yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to put it in the comments below. Both Cassie and I will read through all of them and make sure that we'll give you an answer, whether it's within the comment section, or we'll try to maybe do another video of it. So let us know your thoughts. Thanks again for watching this video. If you like what you saw, please give this video a thumbs up and also subscribe. If you want to get to know Casey a little bit better, please check out the links in the description below.